The following two-part Through the Fire series was recorded in October of 2025.
Dante wrote, "The path to paradise begins in hell." Join Deacon Don Prendergast and David Fortin as they discuss the tools men need to build the domestic church and the spiritual weapons to defend it. This is Through the Fire.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Through the Fire. This is a special episode for Deacon Don and I. We have been on the air for 1 year, and we've asked a really good friend of ours to join us in this episode. He kind of gets credit for creating this.
Well, he was the one that actually introduced the show in the very beginning. He was the one that kind of opened that door.
And he's the one that does
brought us in. So I'm really excited also. I'm very excited because, yeah, I mean, what do I know? I'm just, like I've told you, I'm just a talking head.
That's
I don't know
right.
anything about radio.
And let us introduce our good friend in Brian Howell. Brian, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, guys, so much for the invite. It's my pleasure, and it's hard to believe that it has been a year, but we've just received, so many positive comments about the program from Catholic men, and I know Dave and Deacon Don, you guys have worked so hard to get it across the country on so many other Catholic radio stations. People that are listening right now, thank you so much for carrying this show. And, who knows this side of the veil, how many men that we will have helped to build that domestic church.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. And not only have we grown through Catholic radio, but also my motorcycle club, the Punishers Law Enforcement Motorcycle Club, we're on their radio station as well. I've received commentary across Facebook and whatnot of different people that have really benefited from it. And Brian, I mean, with all sincerity, putting all joking aside, we really do have you to thank for opening that door for us and mentoring us into this whole new experience. But we're incredibly grateful. Thank you.
Well, you are most welcome. It's been an honor, and I'm just glad that I could open the door. And it's really through your guys' hard work that it's come as far as it has. But I really think that's our topic for today, is just mentorship and how important that is for men, especially in this society. I think we all have similar stories as far as, growing up without that. It creates this vacuum that has to be filled somehow. And I think we were all tremendously blessed that we have that positive male role model that sort of stepped in and filled that gap, and we're better men today because of it.
Absolutely. We've talked in the past numerous times about the value and the necessity of men finding groups and organizations to be a part of. I think by our very nature, we tend to be somewhat tribal, we in our very nature, we want to go out on the hunt into the world or the job market of today, but, we want to be around other men. And, God created us in such a way where, we gauge our worthiness based upon what we produce, how strong we are in our character and our disposition, what we can provide for our home, for our community. And really the benefits of growing in that kind of arena comes about through our affiliations with other men. And likewise, if we don't have that, if we are trying to do this by ourselves, oh my goodness, how much harder it is. And when things go wrong, who do you have to lean on? And, Brian, you and I, we were talking before the show about both of us in a little bit different ways, but both of us in our youth. We've had, numerous examples of individuals, of men outside of our home who have made a lasting impression on us and have helped us to grow in our character development, even in a secular sense, not even in a matter of growing in faith, but just trying to understand, not to be cliche, but really the question is, what is a man? What are the attributes? What is the makeup, the stuff that makes a man? And I don't know if you want to share a little bit about what we talked before the show started in your case.
Well, my dad was a long-haul truck driver, so he was scarcely around. And so I had to find those male role models elsewhere. Being 6'7", I took to basketball pretty easy. And so there were coaches along the way that helped me kind of believe in myself. I mean, I was a very poor kid from the wrong side of the tracks, malnourished in so many different ways. And so it's not like I was going to be the next Shaquille O'Neal or anything like that. But the coaches did work with me and help me to believe in myself and push me to go further than I thought I could go. And then, once I got out of basketball, then that was replaced by like junior high and high school youth group leaders. And that was my first introduction to Christ. And that was an important piece that was missing because my family was not religious. My dad was one of those people that was spiritual, but didn't like organized religion, which later when I became Catholic, I always joke with him. It's like, you would love the Catholic Church because we're totally unorganized, but I don't think he got the joke. But it's just having people like that in your life. And then when I got into radio at a young age of just 16 years old, just trying to be a sponge and soak up as much knowledge and learn anything that anyone was willing to teach me. And I built upon those things where, by the time I got into my 40s and 50s, that I had a pretty good toolbox that I had assembled from all the different radio stations I had worked at throughout the years. But I made a promise to myself a long time ago that anytime I was in a position where I could help somebody else out, and it could have been radio, religion, sports, whatever, if someone needed a mentor, I wanted to be able to help and pay it forward in honor of all of those men that made a difference in my life growing up in a small town in north central Montana. So, I was involved with Cub Scouts with my son for many, many years, and I coached him in basketball. I coached my daughter's soccer team, and what I knew about soccer going in wouldn't fill a thimble. But, I had a great time coaching the girls and just having that time with my daughter, so at the end of the day, that's what I want the kids to remember, just to have those memories. It's not the stuff that we owned. It's the time that we spent together. And hopefully they learn something. Hopefully they take some life lessons into their future, something that they learned from their old man. Because, unfortunately, I just didn't have that with my dad.
I think the reality is we like to romanticize the childhood experience, but I would bet more often than not, one of the consistent similarities is, none of us really had the relationship we wanted to have with our dad, especially growing up in a low middle class, low middle income environment. In all likeliness, if dad's in your life, if he's in the home, he's probably working his butt off and you're never going to see him. He's always out there working. I have similar stories. My father wasn't really around. Well, he was around, but he had a bit of a drinking problem. So he was a great provider. But as far as having that personal conversation, mentoring, Dad, I need you to talk to me about this or whatever. Yeah, that really wasn't there for me. But what I did learn was providing, and the character development in my case came through the Boy Scouts and the Scoutmasters and the Scout leaders. And the older scouts, mentoring and teaching me. Plus, in my case, one of probably the best lessons that I've learned were through the natural consequences of being in the great outdoors. You learn real quick that if you don't do this, this will happen. If you think you're going to be a wise guy and do it your own way, you're likely to find yourself getting injured. And I certainly did get injured a few times. And I learned real quick that I better pay attention to somebody who has more knowledge than me if I want to, make it out alive, so to speak. So yeah, mentoring is incredibly important. And I am curious, Brian. So how long have you been in radio? And if you can share with us some of your experiences of your own growth in moving through Catholic radio and into where you're at now.
So I started on St. Patrick's Day of 1984, and this is going back to the days where the music was on records and reel-to-reel tape. We read the local news, the farm report, the missing pet report. I mean, it was just so Mayberry. It was hilarious to think back now. But it was a lot of fun, and it was a great experience. And I got just enough knowledge in my little hometown to be able to go to college. And I learned a lot. I was only there for 13 months at this particular radio station. But I did learn a lot. You know, I had a program director that had a unique way of trying to drive things home. He would just rewind, play it back, rewind, play it back, you know, ad nauseum until it's like, okay, I get it. I understand the lesson. Thank you. But I just learned a lot of different skills that I would need to go to the next step, to the next level. And you know, when things went from analog to digital, everybody was trying to learn at that point. You know, it really, I think, flattened out the curve that now we're all starting from scratch. And so we were all trying to understand this new way of doing things. And unfortunately, you know, being in radio, a lot of what happens there is the ego. And the last job that I had, I was what they call a production manager, where basically all I did was write and produce commercials, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. That's all I did. And I worked with advertising agencies and some of our clients. But it gave me an opportunity, I think, for my ego to shrink a little bit because it wasn't about me anymore. It was about the clients. And I really enjoyed that part of my career. It was about 12 years that I just got to work on my people skills and learning about people and caring for people and what they had to share with our community. But the part that really pushed me out the door, I think I hit the glass ceiling pretty early in that job. And I was just looking for something more. You know, as much as I loved the people I worked with, it was a radio station owned by a corporation that I don't know that they could have found Idaho on a map.
Yeah.
So the fact that, you know, you have these edicts coming down from on high from people that know nothing about the market was really frustrating. And then when you're not making any money, that's really frustrating. So then my wife, God bless her, we had come home from Mass, and I don't know how many years she's listened to me complain about that job. And she found a little want ad, a little message from Salt and Light. They were looking for an operations manager. And so she told me about it Sunday. I sent them my resume Monday, got an interview Tuesday, and was offered the job Wednesday.
Wow.
And that was 13 years ago.
Wow. So has it always been Catholic radio, or was Salt and Light the first Catholic radio station that you worked with?
Yeah, this was the first. So Salt and Light was it. Before that, it was commercial radio. So we were playing music. We were putting on concerts. You know, it's that
So everybody wanted to be Howard Stern and Don Imus, I bet.
Exactly.
Yeah, everybody wanted that.
And that's that's the life I lived for a long time. You know, it was the backstage passes and the girls and the rock stars and the fancy cars and all that stuff.
And none of it, and no surprise, none of it satisfied. None of it really made you feel complete and fulfilled.
No, it didn't. And so I think, you know, looking back, it's always easy to look back, but you learned all of these things along the way, and you took a lesson here and there so that when you got to this point, now it's like, oh, this is what the Lord has been preparing me for since I was 16 years old. You've got a radio network now to help run, and all of the lessons that you learned from commercial radio, from corporate radio, can now serve this nonprofit network, you know, better than I ever would have done in a corporate situation. So
if you're just tuning in, we're talking with our good friend Brian Howell from Salt and Light Catholic Radio, who is the host of the morning show Morning Light, along with Hope Ryan, and we're talking about mentoring. Brian, you've been a tremendous mentor to me. We met through a mutual friend in Pat King, who sort of introduced, and you sort of began to give me little small things to do. Let's talk about the relationship that has grown and how important mentorship is to growing boys into men.
Well, yeah, that introduction was made, you know, by Pat, by Eddie Trask, some other people that we have mutual friendships with. And then you started reaching out to me, asking questions. And it's one of those things that I'm never going to force myself on somebody to, you need to learn this. You want to work with people who are naturally curious and who want to get better. And you, for a long time, asked all the right questions. And so I could tell you were somebody who wanted to get better. And you've had this body of work on this tremendous website of yours and listening to it. And, you're one of these interviewers that does it the right way. You ask the right questions and then you wait for the answers. And that makes a great interview for somebody to go back and listen to. And, any question that you had asked in the past, I mean, how long have we known each other? 2.5 years?
We're going on about 3 years now.
3 years now?
Well,
So,
yeah, 2.5, 3 years. Yeah.
I've just always tried to be there to answer your questions. And, Dave and I talk several times a week about a myriad of different things. But David wanted to get better. He asked the right questions. And, better or worse, whatever knowledge I've given you, it all came from my heart because there were people in my past that gave me the right answers to the questions I was asking. And like I said earlier, I wanted to help other people in whatever they were going through if I could, whether that was something professional, personal. These are the mistakes I've made. These were some things that I found helpful. Take what you can take and do with it what you will. But to just be helpful to people is, we just need that. I think guys are searching for that, even though they may not admit it to themselves because of ego. We need help, iron sharpens iron. And even you look at the scriptures, Jesus mentored Peter and Paul mentored Timothy and Moses and Aaron. I mean, you see all these dynamic duos in scripture.
Mm-hmm.
That's mentorship.
Yeah.
And it's all done out of brotherhood. It's done out of love and wanting to make other people better.
And it doesn't have to be an older man mentoring a younger man.
No.
In our case, I'm actually a couple of years older than you, and you've been very, very generous with me. And, I am eternally grateful for your kindness.
Well, you're more than welcome. And I'm just blessed, our friendship, how it's grown over the years, that it's beyond this radio show. It's beyond our interest in a lot of the same things. That we do have a brotherhood. And I just think that that's something that's sorely missed in today's world. And I don't know the reason. Maybe it is ego. Who knows? I think Deacon Don hit it earlier. It's just that we're so competitive as men that we're all out there trying to chase that almighty buck, and we're willing to take each other out for it. And that's not what we were put on this planet to do.
No, it's pridefulness, the virtue of humility is kind of lost.
Mm-hmm.
Brian, one of the things that I would love to get your take on, I've heard it said that somebody who might be an entrepreneur, let's say, somebody that might be working at it, trying to climb up the corporate ladder for, whatever the environment is. I've heard it said that so often the individual just gives up and quits instead of continuing to push forward, continuing to find within themselves whatever they need in order to persevere. Have you ever had that experience where you felt like, what am I doing? Why am I bothering? I should just pack it in, do something different, but yet you decided to persevere?
Yeah, I can probably think of several times. I know that when I got really homesick, I flamed out in college pretty quick, and I was more interested in playing the DJ at night than really going to class when I was in college. And then I just got homesick and went back home. And my program director at that station, and I had learned so much from him in just 13 months. And he was really sad to let me go. And it wasn't like I was this great jock. It's just that I had this thirst for knowledge and I wanted to get better. And I think he saw a lot more in me than I saw in myself. But I left before I had a chance to really learn anything more from that person. And, then going from the small town of 3,500 people that I grew up in and moving to Boise, Idaho in 1990, I mean, talk about the country mouse moving to the big city. And Boise's just exponentially grown in the 35 years that I've lived here. But I've been tremendously blessed by station managers and program directors that, one of them was in my wedding. He's one of my
Wow.
best friends. And we just always pushed each other, encouraged each other. There's a lot of nonsense and shenanigans that go on in the background sometimes, but,
Sure.
those are the memories that we carry with us. And then when the going gets tough, we try to kind of go back to that. It's like, well, yeah, it's tough now, but think of the good times that we had.
Right.
Think of
Well,
the things, the battles we fought together and came out better on the other side.
yeah, and one of the things that I would like to emphasize from what you said is the station manager that saw more in you than you saw in yourself. And I think that really touches on a big part of, there's for I don't know how many years or maybe even decades, men have been told to just keep your head down, mind your business, just do your thing and, don't make any waves. But nobody's going to grow that way. And,
Right.
and you're really not going to reach your potential, your God-given potential, if all you're doing is just carrying the company water and just keeping your head down and not growing. In my life, there have been a number of individuals who have been influential. And I think that's something that all three of us have in common. And quite honestly, something that I know, maybe the audience doesn't know this, but certainly at particular times over this past year, the three of us have definitely been there for each other to encourage. And, those moments of doubt, it's like, the program's not going anywhere, or, reached out to this particular radio station and they said, I don't know, we got a full calendar right now. Try us back in a year. Or, you get these moments where it's like, well, maybe nobody's listening. Maybe we're wasting our time. So yeah, I think it's important. I know it's important for me to have you in my life and to have you as part of this collaborative effort and team, because we always, when I was a cop in New York City, we used to always have this expression, everybody needs a rabbi. Everybody needs somebody who has been around the block. They know the way things work. They see the potential within you and they make the decision to be a mentor. And that's kind of, and Brian, you've been our rabbi this past year, and certainly even longer than that for David. But
Oy
it
vey.
makes a difference. Oy vey. It makes a difference. It really does. Now I feel like having a corned beef sandwich. No, but seriously, everybody needs a rabbi. Everybody needs a mentor. Everybody needs that group of guys, even if it's small. I mean, Jesus would take his three favorite apostles, whenever Jesus wanted to do something in his own privacy, he always had his three boys that were tagging along, Peter, James, and John. And so it's important to have that. And I think one of the things that men really need to focus on, and what we try to do with this program, is to offer that mentorship. Dave actually was the one that came up with the understanding that what we're doing with this radio show is kind of continuing spiritual direction. And that's what we need to do as Catholic men for each other, is to be there to support one another and to provide that common understanding of our faith. And so it's important. And certainly, Brian, what you've done for us over the last year has been invaluable. But we all have a past. We all have a past. We've all been through the fire. We've been through the mud, and we've spoken to people along the way. See, I threw that in.
You got them all in there this episode, there,
What other
Deacon.
cliche can we bring out? It is important.
We're just casting the net, Deacon.
We're just casting the net. Right, exactly.
Which is a program that Brian and I were working on together, and we should actually do a few more of those, Brian, because those were really good.
Yeah, we have done some good things together, and I think that's where I've really enjoyed the most about David and I's friendship, is that now I am relying on him and his creativity just as much as, he might rely on my advice or, my experience being in this industry for decades. That, now I don't even see me being a mentor anymore, is that we're kind of on the same plane. He's a quick study and he's caught up to me in a hurry, where we really do depend on each other's creativity. And I've just really enjoyed seeing you grow over these past couple of years. But again, it just goes back to, you were willing to listen. Some people aren't. You try to help them, you see where they're maybe going astray and want to get them on the right path to succeed. And again, it doesn't have to be professionally, it could be personally too.
Mm-hmm.
But until that person is open and wants to hear what you have to tell them and is willing to grow outside their comfort zone, you're just yelling at the wind. It's just a waste of time, unfortunately. No matter how bad you see them you want to help them, they've got to be willing to take that help. And sometimes guys just aren't ready for that yet. They haven't reached that point. They haven't hit their rock bottom yet.
How do you know when to cut bait, though, Brian?
Oh, that's a big one.
That's a good question. Sometimes it just happens organically. I mean, the times that I've had to let somebody go, a lot of that is just prayer, because I don't have the words. I hate confrontation. I don't like doing that, but it's one of those things that more often than not, it just happens organically. Something will happen and the problem solves itself.
It's a weird feeling when you come to recognize I'm not talking to the person I think I'm talking to. It's like they've tuned me out. They're not interested in, they're not interested in being teachable. They're not interested in looking at a different perspective. And, it's kind of a weird thing when you get to that place. And it's like, no, it's pointless for me to keep talking because I'm not talking to the person I think I'm talking to.
Yeah, and it goes back to even with my coaching, whether it was girls soccer or boys basketball, I had players that just thought that they were Michael Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not going to waste my time trying to coach that kid up. He seems to think that he knows everything. And so I just let him do what he wants to do. And then I'm going to spend my time with these other kids that need the help and who are willing to learn. Because that was me when I was their age. I didn't really know how to get better at basketball. I'm just this tall, spindly kid, just skin on bones, trying to make the team. And so the coaches were willing to spend some extra time with me because I was willing to take their advice and try to get better.
That's all the time we have this week. Tune in next week at this same time for the conclusion of this broadcast.
So we have a new email address for those of you that are interested in sending us your thoughts on the show or topics you'd like us to cover, prayer requests. If you want to just say hi, send us an email at throughthefire392@gmail.com. Through the Fire, all one word. Through the Fire 392, all together. Through the Fire 392@gmail.com. It's our new email address. Pray for us because we definitely need that, and we'll keep praying for you. So it's throughthefire392@gmail.com. And I've had it said to me, humility. I've had it said to me in regards to spiritual direction. I mean, ultimately, there are two spiritual directors. Either you're going to listen to the Holy Spirit or you're going to listen to the devil. To put it quite bluntly, but it's important for us to, we have to be open to hearing the truth and to being teachable. And it goes both ways as a student and as a mentor. Sometimes, sadly, you're not talking to who you think you're talking to. And that's when, you just got to stop talking and just start listening and just, be prepared to move in a different direction.
Hey, guys, we got to leave it right there. We'll be right back after this break.
The preceding program was the Spirit of Truth Radio Arts original program for CastingThe.net.